The rain poured down in sheets, heavy and cold, turning the once bustling street into a river of rushing water. Amelia, no more than 8, stood there, soaked to the bone. Her eyes locked onto the corner of the alley where the muffled cries of a dog pierced through the storm. She couldn't ignore it. The fear, the pain in those sounds, they gripped her chest in a way she couldn't explain. She had heard the stories of dogs being left to suffer on the streets, but this was real. This was now. She couldn't let another animal die in silence, not on her watch. The leash of uncertainty pulled her forward, and with every drop that fell from the sky, her heart raced, louder than the storm itself. The dog's cries grew louder, more desperate. Without thinking, Amelia dashed into the alley, her small figure swallowed by the darkness. Her shoes sloshed through puddles, each step weighed down by the sheer force of the rain, but her focus remained unwavering. The dog's body, bruised and trembling, lay on the cold pavement. It could barely lift its head to acknowledge her presence, the woman who had tied it there. Her eyes still cold, her demeanor unchanged, was now disappearing into the shadows. But Amelia didn't care. She was alone with the dog now, and the world seemed to shrink, leaving only the desperate animal before her. Amelia dropped to her knees beside the dog, her hands trembling as she reached out. She knew what she had to do, but the thought of what might come next, the weight of her own tiny hands in comparison to the life she was trying to save, made her feel both immense and powerless all at once. Amelia had always been small for her age, quiet in the world, full of louder voices, yet her heart had always been the loudest part of her. That heart led her into that alley, where shadows wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, and the air smelled of damp concrete and abandoned hopes. The rain wasn't letting up, but that didn't matter. All that mattered was the dog. She had heard its cries, had seen the fear in its eyes, and she couldn't just turn away. As Amelia crouched beside the creature, she felt the weight of the world press against her small frame. The dog's fur was matted with dirt, and its breathing was shallow, each exhale a sharp reminder of how little time they both had. Amelia's hands, shaking, finally made contact with the dog's cold, wet fur, and the moment she touched it, something inside her broke. The dog flinched at first, its body tense, but as Amelia gently stroked its back, a flicker of trust sparked in its eyes. She wasn't sure why, but it felt like she had been here before. In this place, at this moment, a bond was forming, fragile but real. The woman who had abandoned the dog had already gone, leaving only a trail of heartbreak in her wake. Amelia didn't know how to help, but she knew she couldn't leave this animal behind. She wasn't sure how to pick it up, or where to take it, but in that moment, she knew that doing nothing was not an option. With one trembling arm around its body, she hoisted the dog into her arms. The weight was heavier than she had anticipated, and her body screamed with the effort, but she didn't let go. Not once. The streets seemed colder now as she walked, the rain blurring her vision, her mind clouded with worry. She knew she had to get help, but for now, it was just her and the dog against the storm. The city was alive with its usual hum, the sound of distant cars splashing through the water, people rushing to and fro, their umbrellas bobbing like tiny boats in a sea of grey. Yet, all of it felt distant to Amelia. Her world had narrowed down to the rhythmic thump of her heart, the sound of her feet splashing against the sidewalk, and the slow, labored breathing of the dog in her arms. She could feel its body weakening, could sense it slipping between consciousness and the edge of death. She didn't know what to do next. She didn't know how to fix it, but she knew that the first step was to get to her home. Her mother would know what to do. She had to trust that the dog wasn't beyond saving. They weren't giving up, not today. But as Amelia walked, each step felt like an eternity. The cold seeped into her bones, the world around her still moving at its own pace while she fought against it, unwilling to let go. When they reached her apartment, Amelia burst through the door, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her mother looked up from the couch, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. Without a word, Amelia set the dog on the living room floor, gently positioning it so that it could breathe, waiting for her mother's command. Her mother's hands were calm but practiced as she knelt beside the dog. She glanced at Amelia, then back at the animal, her gaze softening. Her mother murmured, her fingers brushing against the dog's matted fur. Amelia's heart swelled with hope. The dog was still alive. There was a chance. Her mother went into action, preparing a space for the dog to rest, giving it water, a blanket, and everything it needed to recover. In the following days, Amelia spent every moment she could by the dog's side. She named it Charlie, though it took her a while to speak the name aloud. She was afraid it would jinx the fragile hope she had begun to build. Charlie was still weak, its body covered in scars, its eyes full of fear and confusion. But as the days passed, its strength began to return. The dog's breathing steadied, its movements slowly becoming less stiff. Each small step forward felt like a monumental victory, and Amelia watched, captivated, as the creature she had saved transformed before her eyes. Her mother was always there, guiding her through the process. Love and patience, her mother would say. That's what every animal needs. And time. It was in those moments, when Charlie's eyes would meet hers, filled with trust, with something more than pain, that Amelia understood what she had given. It wasn't just a rescue, it was a bond, a promise that she wouldn't give up, not on Charlie, not on herself. The first time Charlie wagged its tail, Amelia nearly cried. The dog wasn't just surviving anymore, it was living. It was healing. Weeks passed, and the dog, once broken and abandoned, had blossomed into something strong. Charlie was no longer just a survivor, he had become a part of their family. Amelia's friends loved him, and her mother's smile grew brighter whenever she saw the dog's wagging tail or heard his bark echoing through their home. But what Amelia didn't expect was how much this dog would teach her. He wasn't just teaching her about resilience and survival. He was showing her how to live again. Through him, Amelia learned to slow down, to appreciate the small moments, and to see the beauty in the fight, even when it seemed impossible. One day, as Amelia sat on the porch, Charlie's head resting on her lap, she realized that this wasn't just about the dog. It was about everything they had gone through together. This wasn't just a story of rescue. This was a story of growth for both of them. Charlie had healed, yes, but Amelia had learned to heal too. It was a sunny afternoon when they went for their first real walk together, the kind of walk that felt like an unspoken victory. The sun warmed the earth, casting long shadows on the grass as they moved through the park. Amelia's hand rested lightly on Charlie's back, feeling the strength he had regained. He was no longer the fragile, broken creature she had carried home that night. He was strong, confident, and, for the first time, happy. As they walked together, side by side, Amelia couldn't help but smile. The journey had been long, filled with obstacles, but it had led her to this moment. A moment where she knew that both she and Charlie had become something more than they had been before. They had saved each other, in ways that words could never fully capture. And as the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the sweet scent of spring, Amelia realized that the bond they shared was a story of resilience, love, and healing that would never fade. It would stay with them forever. Amelia didn't expect it, but she began to notice how much her own world had changed since Charlie came into her life. It wasn't just the morning walks, or the way the sound of his paws padded against the floor brought a sense of warmth to the otherwise quiet house. It was something deeper, something she couldn't quite name, a subtle shift, a quiet revelation that came in the stillness of their shared moments. There was a bond between them now, a shared understanding that transcended words. Her school days passed in a blur, each moment consumed with thoughts of Charlie and his progress. The dog had become more than a pet, he was a symbol of something much larger, something both fragile and unbreakable. The scars on his body were fading, his energy returning with every passing day. And yet Amelia felt the healing wasn't just happening in him. It was happening within her too. She had always felt small, unsure of her place in the world, but now, in the quiet companionship of a dog that had fought through adversity, she began to find her own strength. Every time Charlie would look at her with those trusting eyes, she realized something. She didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to have all the answers. Life was about showing up, even when things seemed impossible. It was about fighting through the storms, however long they lasted, and finding peace on the other side. And as she sat beside him each night, watching the stars flicker in the vast sky, Amelia knew this was her journey too. She was becoming something more, just as Charlie had. The quiet calm of their home was disrupted one autumn afternoon when a knock echoed through the door. Amelia opened it hesitantly, her heart skipping a beat as she saw a woman standing there, her expression filled with uncertainty and shame. The woman, slightly older than Amelia's mother, was looking at Charlie, her face a blend of guilt and sorrow. "Is that my dog?" she asked softly, voice trembling. Amelia froze. Her mind raced. She'd known, deep down, that this moment would come. The woman was the one who had abandoned Charlie, the one who had left him to fend for himself on the streets, tied to that cold pole. Amelia could feel her chest tighten with a mix of anger and disbelief, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she nodded and stepped aside to let the woman in. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she knelt beside Charlie, who instinctively pulled back, his body stiff. Amelia watched the interaction closely, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. The woman reached out, her hand trembling, but Charlie didn't move, his eyes distant and wary. I didn't know what else to do," the woman murmured, her voice breaking. "I didn't have the money to care for him anymore." Amelia's mother stepped forward, her gaze steady but kind. "It's never easy. But abandoning a living being is never the answer." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, one that Amelia felt in her gut. She knew her mother was right. As the woman apologized again and again, her tears fell freely. Amelia stood silently, her gaze fixed on Charlie, who was still wary but not as frightened as before. She felt a twinge of sorrow for the woman, but it wasn't enough to change what had already been done. Charlie was here now, safe, and that was what mattered. Amelia wouldn't let anyone take that away. The days that followed were a mix of healing and reflection. Charlie had been through so much, and yet, his resilience shone through in every step he took. Amelia had been the one to save him, but Charlie had taught her something she never expected: forgiveness. The woman, despite her actions, had come to apologize, and though it was painful, Amelia realized that in the act of forgiveness, she was freeing herself from the weight of anger and resentment. She had always been taught that forgiveness was a gift you give to others, but now she understood it as something that also healed the giver. In the act of letting go, Amelia found a peace she hadn't realized she was searching for. Charlie had no judgment of the woman who had hurt him. He had moved on, with nothing but love in his heart. In the weeks that followed, Amelia continued to nurture the bond between them, and they both began to grow in ways that were unimaginable before. Charlie started running, no longer limping but leaping through the open fields behind her house. His coat shone, his eyes bright, and his bark had a vibrancy that echoed through the stillness of their quiet life. He had come back from the brink of death, and now he was truly living. Amelia would watch him chase after sticks, his tail wagging furiously, and a smile would spread across her face. This dog, who had been left to die, was now a testament to the power of second chances. And as the sun set each evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amelia realized that this was the life she had always wanted. A life where the stormy days gave way to clear skies, and where love and forgiveness built bridges even across the deepest scars. Charlie was no longer a victim of his past. Neither was Amelia. Together, they had created something new, something beautiful, a life worth living, despite the storms that had tried to drown them both. And as they lay side by side, drifting off to sleep, the future seemed brighter than it ever had before. They were not just survivors, they were thrivers. As the months unfolded, the bond between Amelia and Charlie solidified into something unbreakable, a quiet understanding that no words could capture. Each morning, as Amelia stepped out into the world with her book bag slung over her shoulder, Charlie was there, tail wagging, waiting by the door, as if reminding her that no matter where she went, he would always be there to welcome her back home. The rhythmic pattern of their lives felt like a song, each note familiar, each moment shared in perfect harmony. But life, as it often does, has a way of throwing challenges at even the most peaceful of moments. It wasn't long before a sudden shift in Amelia's life would test everything they had built. Her mother, who had once been the pillar of their household, was offered a new job out of town. It was a great opportunity, one she had worked for years to achieve. But it came at a cost. Moving meant leaving behind everything they had known, including their home and Charlie. Amelia had always loved the idea of moving to a new place. But the thought of leaving Charlie behind left her feeling like the ground beneath her feet was crumbling. She couldn't bear the thought of taking him to a new place, one that might not be as kind to him as the streets they had walked together. The familiar smells of their home, the warmth of their shared space, the backyard where Charlie had learned to play, all of it would be gone. The weight of that decision hung heavy over Amelia. She found herself torn between her love for her mother and her devotion to Charlie. She knew that whatever happened, she would have to make a choice, and that choice would change everything. The moving day arrived far too quickly. Amelia's mother had already packed most of their belongings into the back of the moving truck, and the house was beginning to look emptier, colder. Charlie stood by the door, his big eyes searching for answers, his tail lowering slightly, as if he could sense the shift in the air. Amelia knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she stroked his fur. "I'm sorry, Charlie," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. "I don't want to leave you. But this is what's best for us, for all of us." Charlie looked up at her, as though he understood, his eyes full of loyalty, full of love. But in that moment, it was too much for Amelia. She broke. Tears streamed down her face as she buried her face in his fur, apologizing over and over. The decision had been made. Her mother's job had to come first. They were going to leave, and Charlie would have to stay behind, with the neighbor who had volunteered to care for him. Amelia kissed the top of Charlie's head, trying to memorize the feel of his fur against her skin, as if this small act of affection would somehow make the pain of the separation easier. "You'll be okay, won't you?" she asked, more to herself than to him. But Charlie didn't answer. He just stood there watching her, his loyalty unwavering. He knew. They both knew that this wasn't a goodbye, just a change, a new chapter that neither of them had asked for. As the truck pulled away, the weight of the decision felt suffocating. Amelia looked out the back window, watching Charlie stand there in the driveway, his small form growing smaller with each passing second. He would always be a part of her, no matter the distance. But as the house disappeared from view, she couldn't help but feel the sting of loss. It was as if they were two pieces of a puzzle that no longer fit together. Months passed in the new town, and life gradually found a new rhythm. Amelia's mother had settled into her new job, and the house was starting to feel like home, even if Amelia couldn't shake the ache that resided deep in her chest. Charlie was always in her thoughts, his absence like a void in her heart that nothing seemed to fill. But life, as it often does, has a way of bringing unexpected blessings. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Amelia's mother came into her room with a strange smile on her face. "I think we should take a little trip today," she said, her voice filled with a hint of excitement. Amelia's curiosity piqued, and her heart skipped a beat. "Where are we going?" Her mother handed her a small envelope, and when Amelia opened it, she gasped. There, in the picture, was Charlie, standing in the same yard where they had left him, tail wagging, his eyes gleaming with recognition. "I couldn't just let him go," her mother explained. "I contacted the neighbor, and they've been sending me pictures. I thought it was time you saw him again." Amelia felt a rush of emotions flood through her. She was overwhelmed, grateful, and so incredibly happy. Without saying another word, she hugged her mother tightly, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. They were going to see Charlie again, and nothing had ever felt more right. The reunion was everything Amelia had dreamed of. As they drove back to their old neighborhood, Amelia's heart raced. She couldn't wait to see him, to hold him once again. The familiar sights of their old street brought a rush of memories. The laughter, the rainstorms, the quiet moments of reflection with Charlie by her side. When they arrived at the house, it was as though time had stood still. Charlie was waiting at the gate, his body wiggling with excitement. As soon as he saw Amelia, he ran toward her, his tail a blur of motion. He leaped into her arms, licking her face, and in that moment, Amelia knew that no matter where life took them, They would always find their way back to each other. It was the first time in months that she felt complete. Charlie had never truly left her. He had been a part of her all along, woven into the fabric of her life. She had never truly abandoned him, and he had never given up on her. In each other's eyes, they saw the shared journey, the struggles, and the triumphs. They were finally whole again. As they drove away from the house, Charlie sitting contentedly by Amelia's side, she realized that sometimes the things that seem like endings are just the beginning of something new. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, she whispered softly, "Why made it, Charlie?" Together, the days after the reunion were a blur of joy and healing. Amelia and Charlie had settled into a rhythm that felt as though no time had passed at all. The bond that had once been tested by distance and circumstance now felt stronger than ever. There were no more goodbyes, no more empty spaces between them. Charlie was back in her life, where he belonged. His presence had filled the silence of the new house, and his unwavering loyalty had restored the calm Amelia had once feared was lost forever. But even in the peaceful moments, there lingered a quiet question. Amelia knew that this chapter, though perfect in its own right, would not last forever. There would be more challenges, more shifts in their world. But for now, she could allow herself to be content in the simplicity of it all. The feel of Charlie's fur beneath her hands as she ran her fingers through it every night. The way his head rested on her lap, the warm weight of him as they watched the rain together, like they had in the past. As weeks turned into months, Amelia began to reflect on everything they had been through. The quiet moments and the loud ones, the losses and the triumphs. It was in those reflections that she realized how much she had learned from Charlie, how much he had taught her about resilience, forgiveness, and the unspoken language of love. Charlie had come to her broken and lost, but he had transformed into the dog she knew he could be. And in doing so, he had helped her do the same. Through it all, they had learned to fight for each other, to never let go, no matter how dark the world seemed. In the days to come, Amelia knew there would be more storms to face, but with Charlie by her side, she felt invincible. It wasn't long before Amelia realized that the lessons she had learned with Charlie weren't meant to stay within the walls of their home. The world outside was vast, full of people and animals that needed saving, just like Charlie had. Amelia had always known she wanted to make a difference, but now she understood what that truly meant. It wasn't just about rescue, it was about healing, not just for the ones who were saved, but for the ones doing the saving. As her thoughts turned to the future, Amelia began to explore ways she could make a lasting impact. She started volunteering at animal shelters, learning more about animal welfare and advocacy. The journey that had started with one small dog had now blossomed into something bigger. Amelia knew that in order to truly honor the journey she and Charlie had shared, she had to give back, to continue the cycle of love and compassion that had brought them together. Charlie, ever by her side, would accompany her to the shelters, his tail wagging as if he knew the importance of their mission. There was something magical about the way he connected with the other animals, a quiet understanding between them that only those who had experienced the worst could truly share. The dogs at the shelter, some broken, some hopeful, responded to him in ways that amazed Amelia. They saw something in Charlie, something that told them it was okay to trust again, that it was okay to believe in a second chance. As she worked with the animals, Amelia's heart began to grow. She realized that her journey was not just about saving others. It was about growing alongside them. She had started this path thinking she was the one doing the saving, but the truth was, she was being saved too. Every wag of a dog's tail, every grateful gaze, every moment of connection filled a part of her that she didn't even know had been empty. Years passed, but the lessons Charlie had taught Amelia never faded. They had become intertwined in a way that felt like destiny, each moment leading them to the next. Amelia had grown into a young woman, strong and compassionate, with a deep love for animals and a passion for making a difference in the world. Charlie, her constant companion, had aged with grace, his fur now tinged with the gray of time, but his spirit unchanged. He was still the same dog who had once been lost and afraid, but now he was a symbol of everything they had both endured and overcome. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Amelia thought back on everything they had been through. The stormy days, the quiet nights, the pain and the healing. It had all led them to this moment, a moment of peace and contentment. She couldn't have asked for anything more. Charlie, resting his head on her lap, seemed to understand. He had given her everything, his loyalty, his love, and his unwavering faith in her. And in return, she had given him the world. They had saved each other in ways that words could never fully express. And in this quiet, golden moment, Amelia knew that they would continue to save each other, time and time again. As the night settled around them, the stars flickering overhead like tiny promises of the future, Amelia whispered to Charlie, "We've made it, haven't we?" Together. Charlie's eyes, bright and full of love, met hers. And in that look, Amelia knew that no matter where life took them, no matter the challenges they faced, they would always have each other. Because their journey was far from over. It was only just beginning, and as they sat there, side by side, in the stillness of the night, Amelia knew that love was the greatest rescue of all. As Amelia looked out at the quiet street from the window of their cozy home, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey she had taken with Charlie. The weight of those years, the good and the bad, had shaped her in ways she never imagined. When she first found him, she was just a little girl with a big heart. Now she was a young woman, with Charlie by her side, having faced every hardship that life threw their way together. It wasn't just the physical scars that had healed over time. Their bond, forged in that alleyway of pain and desperation, had grown into something deeper, something unspoken but understood. They had both come so far from where they began. Charlie had not only survived, he had thrived, becoming the loyal companion she had always dreamed of. His coat had grown shinier with each passing day, his eyes brighter, his steps more confident. But, as with all things, the inevitable passage of time left its mark. The dog who once stumbled in pain had become slower with age. He no longer bounded across the yard with the same enthusiasm, but there was still a spark of that wild, fearless spirit in him, a reminder of the fierce will to live that he had always carried. One winter evening, as Amelia sat by the fire with Charlie curled up at her feet, she felt an undeniable heaviness in her chest. The world around her felt quieter, softer, as if nature itself was holding its breath. She ran her fingers gently through Charlie's fur, his body warm beneath her touch, but there was a subtle wariness to him now. The signs of old age were unmistakable. A quiet sadness settled over her heart. The thought she had been trying to avoid was now a reality. The dog, who had once been so full of life, the dog who had fought so hard to survive, was growing older, and the time would come when their journey together would reach its end. She didn't want to face it. She wasn't ready to say goodbye. But in that moment, Charlie lifted his head and looked at her, his eyes still holding the same depth of love and trust they had always shared. A wave of emotion surged through Amelia. There was no fear in his gaze, no regret, only the calm acceptance of a life well lived, a life spent in companionship and love. She whispered to him softly, "We've been through so much, haven't we? And we're still here together." Charlie gave a faint wag of his tail, and then lowered his head back onto her lap, as if reassuring her that he was content, that he had no regrets. They had made it through the darkest days, and now they were simply enjoying the light of the present. The quiet tick of the clock echoed through the room, marking the passing of time. Amelia felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the years they had shared. She had been given something that few people ever experienced, the privilege of witnessing the healing power of love, of witnessing an animal's strength and resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. And in return, Charlie had been given the greatest gift of all, a life filled with care, comfort, and a family who adored him. The next morning, as the first light of dawn spilled into the room, Amelia gently awoke to the sound of Charlie's soft breathing. She smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair from her face, as she looked down at the old dog beside her. His tail was still, but his presence was as solid as ever. It was time. Time to let go, to honor the life they had shared. Time to make sure that, when the time came, he would not have to face his final moments alone. Amelia's heart swelled with a bittersweet love as she leaned down to kiss his head, just as she had so many years ago when she had first found him. "You've taught me everything I know," she whispered. "And I'll never forget you, Charlie. I promise." Charlie's eyes fluttered, and he looked up at her one last time. His gaze was peaceful, serene, as though he understood. Then, with a deep, contented sigh, he closed his eyes. Amelia sat quietly by his side, holding his paw, her heart breaking but also full of a quiet, profound love. She had given him a second chance, and he had done the same for her. And just as the sun rose over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the room, Amelia knew that Charlie's spirit would always be with her. The love they shared could never be erased. It was a bond that transcended time, a connection that would never fade, no matter how many years passed. She held him close for a moment longer before standing to prepare for the hard journey ahead. She knew she had to say goodbye, but she also knew that every moment they had shared, every challenge they had faced, had been worth it. And though the pain of loss would remain, it would be overshadowed by the incredible gift of having had Charlie in her life. As she walked away from their home that day, Charlie's memory with her, Amelia knew one thing for certain: sometimes the greatest gifts in life come when you least expect them. Sometimes they come in the form of a dog who shows you that love, in its purest form, has the power to heal, to grow, and to last forever. The sun continued to rise, and Amelia walked forward, knowing that the journey she and Charlie had taken together would always be a part of her. And just as she had once saved him, he had, in return, saved her, in ways that words would never be able to express. In her heart, she knew that the love they shared would never truly end.